Yeah. So I've chosen a small little section out of my PhD thesis to present because I recently did a reanalysis. It's about urban greenery, and urban greenery generally is considered as, a lot of people consider it to be beneficial for urban biodiversity, right? The more green spaces, the more greenery you have, the more urban wildlife that you would expect to have. But are all kinds of urban greenery the same? So what we did was that we have 42 transects all over Singapore. Singapore is a very highly urbanized landscape. The framework of greenery that we used was basically there is cultivated or managed greenery and there is natural or spontaneous greenery. Within cultivated greenery, it depends also upon the vertical strata. You have trees and you have shrubs and you also have lawn cover. So for natural greenery, it's the same. You have forest or you have scrubland. This is the case for Singapore. So what we did was we tested whether all these different kinds of greenery are the same, and we also included interactions with traffic as in the candidate models that we considered. And what we found, this was a paper that was published last year, we found was that natural greenery, of course, unsurprisingly, was the most beneficial for bird biodiversity, but also we found that cultivated tree cover was also beneficial. The higher cultivated tree cover you have, the higher alpha diversity of birds you would have. And we also found that there was an interaction between tree cover, cultivated tree cover, and also traffic. Traffic is measured by the road lane density. For butterflies, what we found was that natural greenery, again, was good for butterfly alpha diversity, but there was a negative impact of road lane density. But these surveys were actually carried out in transects that were 500 meters long, and the landscape variables were extracted from 50 meters left and right of the midline of the transects that the surveyors walked. But this gives you an area of 5 hectares, and 5 hectares is not the typical kind of scale that individual land developers, they would actually operate at. What we need to do is we need to develop models that can inform management at the relevant scale at which the ecological processes are happening. So you know that at different scales, different animals, perhaps of different body sizes, use different kinds of resources, and the different kinds of greenery that we have in our framework actually can reflect different kinds of resource patches, which means that they might operate at different scales. So this is a very fine scale kind of difference that we're testing. We're testing whether, so what we decided to do was to conduct analysis of a different set of data. These were surveys conducted in point counts of birds and butterflies, and we asked whether the greenery variables extracted at a 50-meter buffer radius which was more important. Was it at a 50-meter buffer radius or was it at a 126-meter buffer radius? So 2 different kinds of spatial scales. The polygons in green are the 7 study sites that were prescribed to us by the collaborating government agencies that were part of the project. And within these study sites, we mapped out all the greenery, all the traffic, and we had point counts that were randomly generated across these landscapes. But because they were in blocks like this, so we had to use random effects in mixed effects modeling. So this table will give you the results, the key results that I will present. First, I need to talk about how we measure the relative importance of the variables at the 2 spatial scales, 50 meters and 126-meter buffer radii. So one of the more commonly used is the sum of AIC-derived model weights. I think those who are familiar with AIC, multi-model inference, would know that if there is a W, which gives you the probability that this variable is in the best model, okay? But this W, this relative importance metric has been criticized because it gives you the probability that the variable is in the best model, but it doesn't really incorporate any information about the relative strength, the effect size of that variable. So recently, I had a collaborator, a longtime friend, who worked on looking at how you can actually incorporate this effect size into these relative importance metrics. And so we used permutational reduction in the explanatory power of the models. When you permutate the variable, what happens? What's the reduction in explanatory power? So for mixed effects models, you have conditional R-square, and for the fixed effects only component of these mixed effect models, you have the marginal R-square. So we measured this permutational reduction in the importance. This is a lot of numbers, so I'm just going to gray out and show you the key results. What we found was that natural vegetation and traffic was more important, clearly more important at the larger spatial scale, but cultivated tree cover was about equal importance at the 2 spatial scales. For butterflies, it was only traffic, and all the other greenery variables were not really important. And so in summary, the conclusions are that natural vegetation and traffic, same as in the TRISEC study, the direction of the effects are the same. Natural vegetation good, cultivated tree cover is good, traffic is bad, and it's more important at the larger spatial scales. But the tree cover could actually be of similar importance at both spatial scales. For butterflies, we suspect that the lower explanatory power could be because butterflies are really poorly sampled by stationary short duration point counts. Yeah, that's it.
Does this mean we should always have cultivated tree cover in our urban landscapes?
Everyone in Singapore, that's the case, we find that. But we have a problem is that this is just alpha diversity. So when we look at alpha diversity, it does look like we can promote alpha diversity, but when we did another analysis as part of the paper, we found that actually cultivated tree cover and all kinds of cultivated greenery can actually result in a homogenized kind of bird and butterfly communities. So it's deceptively increasing alpha diversity, but it's actually homogenizing the diversity of the communities across the landscape. Yeah.
What was your definition of cultivated cover? Like, I know Singapore's pretty urbanized, kind of. Is it just gardens or?
Yeah. So the best way to contrast it would be to contrast it against natural vegetation cover, right? So in the urban areas, we know that you plant trees, you have manicured lawns, and you plant shrubs. So those are cultivated greenery. But you also have patches, like sometimes you have brown fields, where vacant lots are allowed to grow back, and then you have scrublands seeding, which eventually, for Singapore's case, develops into forest. So those would be the natural vegetation.